Hello besties and welcome to another Genshin theory! I still am not back with my actual mic yet. I'm still at home on my winter break, so my mic is still in my dorm, so the audio in this video is not as bad as the last one, but it's still not good, so I am sorry about that. I'm recording this on my phone, so hopefully it'll be a little bit better than last time, but, you know, who knows. If any of you are on Twitter, I'm sure you saw that a bunch of Fontaine character designs got leaked. I'm not going to show any of them here since they all got copyright claimed, and I don't want to jeopardize my channel with another strike, but I'm sure you can find them if you look hard enough. Now that Sumeru's main story seems to be over, it looks like the developers are quickly moving on to working on Fontaine. And even though the characters got leaked, not a lot of other stuff about Fontaine is public yet. But I do think we have enough to play with for now. Obviously this video is just going to be predictions, so don't take anything I say too seriously. I can end up being totally wrong about everything. It would not be the first time. Before I tell you any of my predictions, let me quickly go over everything we already definitively know about Fontaine, because I feel like that's pretty important. So Fontaine is the nation of Hydro, and its archon is Focalor, the god of justice. Focalor is widely disliked throughout the country. It's implied that this is a similar situation to Rukdavada and Nahida, where one was the original archon that everyone liked, and now everyone hates the replacement. The old Hydro archon sent the Lockfolk out across Tevat as spies, but not in the traditional sense. She really just wanted to spread her presence everywhere in the continent as a friendly kind of thing. When the old Hydro archon died and Focalor replaced her, the Lockfolk were so appalled by this that they refused to acknowledge Focalor as the ruler of Fontaine to this day. Nahida tells us that Focalor does not officially preside over trials, but will make appearances and influence final verdicts anyway. Instead, it's implied that Chief Justice Nuviet presides over these trials and has a close personal relationship with Focalor, commenting on her hysterical behavior in Nahida's character announcement. Fontaine is the most technologically advanced nation in Tevat. Inventors from Fontaine are responsible for the camera, Mikage furnace, Evermotion mechanical painting, numbering machine, and possibly printing press based on the existence of Fontaine's continent-wide newspaper, the Steambird. The Daydream Club is a group of inventors from Fontaine. So far we've met 5 NPCs who are members of the club. Fontaine is also the home of rock music and the Iridescence Tour, a music festival mentioned by Xinyan. In the most recent Marvelous Merchandise event, Li Ben told us that the people of Fontaine are feeling antsy these days as they're expecting some kind of huge judgment to happen soon. Fontaine is mostly based on France, specifically during the European Industrial Revolution. However, lots of players, including myself, are under the impression that there already are and will be more narrative references to the French Revolution, which happened several decades earlier. And that's pretty much everything we know about Fontaine so far. Focalor is a really interesting character concept to me. We've already seen 2 archons be unpopular with their people, so it's not like this is anything new, but I'm excited to see how the writers deal with this idea differently for the 3rd time in a row. The other 2 archons who were disliked by their people are A and Nahida, but both of them were redeemed in their own ways. I doubt this will happen, but I like the idea of Focalor just being unapologetically terrible and not getting any redemption arc. Nuviet already implied that she has a really bad personality, so I feel like it'll be hard for her to see that she's the problem, especially if the writers go with the story based on the French Revolution. A and Nahida both got redemptions in the eyes of their countries but retain their power. How crazy would it be if Focalor lost it? I'm sure you already know this, but in case you don't, the French Revolution was basically when a bunch of people decided to overthrow the rich ruling class in a really violent way. Long story short, monarchs lost their power and got their heads chopped off. If Genshin goes with the French Revolution-inspired story for the Fontaine Archon quests, and they probably will, then Focalor should totally be overthrown and not given her influence back. Obviously, I doubt we'll see an Archon literally get guillotined, but I do think Focalor will figuratively have her head cut off. Like all of the gods in Tevat, Focalor is named after a demon from the Lesser Key of Solomon, a 17th century grimoire detailing Abrahamic demon summoning rituals. Focalor is named after Focalor, the 41st demon. Sometimes Genshin messes up the demon names, but I guess Focalor isn't technically wrong, they just use the French pronunciation instead, which makes sense for a French character. Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, the book that the Lesser Key of Solomon is based on, says that Focalor hoped to return to the 7th throne after 1,000 years, but was deceived. I read so much stuff to try and figure out what exactly that means, but I'm still not sure. I read the entirety of the Lesser Key of Solomon and Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, plus some other excerpts on Jewish, Christian, and Islamic demonology, and I have literally nothing. I think this is a reference to the 7 demons who represent the 7 planets in the Lesser Key of Solomon, but I could be wrong. If any of you know what Focalor returning to the 7th throne is about, please let me know because I feel like that could be important. But either way, the demon Focalor wanted something but was deceived and never got it. Although Genshin is based more on the Lesser Key of Solomon than Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, there are a few differences between the two. They're almost identical. I think Genshin will reference Focalor's story from Pseudomonarchia Daemonum because it has extra details than his explanation in the Lesser Key of Solomon. That means seems that Genshin Focalor wanted to gain some power that she couldn't due to lies or misunderstandings. I think that this will manifest in the story of how Focalor became the new Hydro Archon. Think about it, the old Hydro Archon who everyone liked died, and Focalor replaced her, but was so bad that the Lock folk self-exiled and the humans from Fontaine seemed to constantly be annoyed by her. We don't know when Focalor was born. She could easily have been alive while the old Hydro Archon was. She could even have been alive during the Archon War. Either way, if Focalor was alive at the same time as the old Hydro Archon, that means she saw her predecessor have power that she wanted. When the old Hydro Archon died, Focalor could have quickly stepped in to get what she wanted, but it wasn't exactly like she hoped. The people of Fontaine didn't like her. Or alternatively, what if Focalor killed the old Hydro Archon? I really don't think that will happen because it seems way too dark for the main story, but Genshin has dealt with pretty serious topics before, so you can never be 100% sure. I think Focalor killing the old Hydro Archon so she could take her place is a cool idea, but that might make her too unlikable for a playable character that I'm sure Hoyoverse expects to perform well in banner sales. But regardless of how the old Hydro Archon died, I do think that Focalor took advantage of the power vacuum in Fontaine, but went about doing so the wrong way, causing everyone in Fontaine to hate her. Characters besides Focalor are a little bit harder to make predictions for. We've already seen Liney and Lynette in the Travail trailer, so we know that they'll be important to the main story as all Travail characters have been so far. I also think we'll see playable characters who come from the various factions throughout Fontaine that we've heard about through NPCs. Like, I think there'll be a reporter from the Steambird and an inventor from the Daydream Club. I think we'll see Fontaine's penchant for inventing in the main story. Maybe we'll have to build something to get out of something that seems unsolvable. I already mentioned Chief Justice Nuviet, so let's get back to them. In Nuviet's trivia section on the Genshin wiki, it says that their name may be a reference to the French play Cyrano de Bergerac. In the play, secondary protagonist Christian de Nuviet is an unintelligent man who dies during a siege against a Spanish-occupied town. I doubt that Genshin's Nuviet is based on Cyrano de Bergerac's Christian de Nuviet, though. As the Chief Justice of Fontaine's court system, Nuviet must be fairly intelligent. Yenfei tells us that Fontaine's legal codices are the most complicated in all of Teyvat, so as the Chief Justice, Nuviet should understand them fairly well. Lots of people have assumed that Nuviet is a woman based on their name ending with the feminine et suffix, but we don't actually know Nuviet's gender for sure yet. Some leaks make it seem like they may actually be a man. If that's the case, then Nuviet is probably their last name, although Genshin doesn't particularly care too much for rigid rules about gender. If you think about it, Scaramouche is basically canonically trans, so who really cares? Anyway, as Chief Justice, Nuviet officially presides over trials, but like I mentioned earlier, Focalor is usually present at said trials and can influence the final decision despite not actively participating in the trial. Nuviet's comment on Focalor's behavior in Nahida's character announcement implies that the two have a somewhat close relationship. I think that to make herself look fair, Focalor uses her relationship with Nuviet to influence verdicts rather than openly announcing her opinions. That way people won't see her as a tyrant and Nuviet's job isn't totally pointless. Maybe Nuviet is in on Focalor's unpopular actions, or maybe they're just being manipulated by her. Either way, I think that Nuviet serves as a political shield for Focalor. If Focalor turns out to be the villain I'm expecting her to be, then that would make Nuviet an accomplice. Liben told us that the people of Fontaine are expecting some kind of world-changing judgment to happen soon, but I don't think that this judgment is going to come from the god of justice. I think it's just the opposite. I think Liben is foreshadowing an uprising against Focalor. The judgment he brought up is probably just Fontaine judging their Archon. You really can't do a story based on French history without having people overthrow the ruler. I have a hard time picturing Fontaine without that happening at some point. And that's pretty much it. Hopefully Fontaine won't be as annoying to traverse as Sumeru was with all those underground areas, but I honestly think Fontaine will be worse. Fontaine is the water country, so I'm sure we're gonna have to swim a lot, so don't be surprised if I don't collect all the hydroculi, because I bet my life that a lot of them will be underwater. My thalassophobia is not gonna handle Fontaine super well. Let me know what you think we're gonna see in Fontaine. Right now I feel like we're in a place with it where basically any predictions go because we don't really know anything yet. Thank you so much for liking, commenting, and subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Bye, besties!